Ezra Cole had won his seat on Flight 2247 from a national STEM scholarship competition. He was not supposed to be there. Kids from Clarkston, Georgia, the part of Clarkston where the gas stations had bars on the windows and the school library hadn't received new books since 2011, did not usually end up on international flights to London for academic conferences. But Ezra had entered the Future Aviators and Engineers of America scholarship competition on a dare from his best friend, submitted a 40-page research paper on autonomous flight navigation systems at age 15, and won first place in his age category by a margin that made the judges reread his application 3 times to confirm his age. The prize was a fully funded trip to the International Young Engineers Summit in London. His mother had cried for 20 minutes when the letter arrived. His little sister had made him a card out of construction paper that said, "My brother is a genius," in uneven red letters. He had folded that card and put it in his carry-on bag. It was in the overhead bin directly above seat 24C when the storm hit. The turbulence had begun 40 minutes into the transatlantic flight, first gentle, the kind passengers are told to expect, then moderate, then severe, and then something that the co-pilot, First Officer Daniel Marsh, had never experienced in 11 years of commercial flying. The plane was caught in a rapidly intensifying supercell storm system that had not been in the forecast 3 hours ago and was now directly in their path with no clean route around it. Captain Howard Reed had been flying for 26 years. He was experienced, decorated, and calm under pressure, right up until the moment, at 34,000 feet over the Atlantic, when his left arm went numb and the pain in his chest became something he could no longer breathe through. He managed to say one thing to First Officer Marsh before he lost consciousness. "Take the controls." And then Captain Reed slumped sideways in his seat, unconscious, and Flight 2247 lost its captain in the middle of the worst storm it had ever flown through. Marsh took the controls with both hands. He was 29 years old. He had 1,400 hours of flight time. He was legally qualified to fly this aircraft. What he was not qualified for, what no amount of training hours had prepared him for, was this particular combination: a supercell storm of this intensity, a malfunctioning autopilot system that had shorted out when lightning struck the aircraft's left wing 11 minutes ago, a primary navigation display that was showing corrupted data, and the complete psychological weight of 247 lives depending on his ability to function. His hands were shaking. He radioed air traffic control. The response came back broken. The storm interference was fragmenting every transmission. He caught pieces. Descend to. Cannot confirm. Routing unavailable. Maintain. And then static. And then nothing. Flight attendant Karen Bryce had called for any medical personnel on board. A doctor had come forward and was working on Captain Reed in the cockpit doorway. She had then done what she was trained to do, kept her voice calm, kept the passengers as settled as possible, kept moving. But she had seen Marsh's hands. She had seen the navigation display. She was standing in the forward galley trying to reach the airline's operations center on the secondary communication line when she felt someone standing behind her. She turned around. It was a teenager, thin, in a gray t-shirt and jeans. Young face, serious eyes, the kind of eyes that didn't match his age. He was holding his carry-on bag strap with both hands. "I need to get into the cockpit," he said. Karen stared at him. "Sir, you need to return to your... The autopilot is out," he said. "The nav display is corrupted. It's reading a false heading because the lightning strike on the left wing damaged the magnetometer. The real storm gap is 40 degrees north of wherever that display is pointing right now. If the first officer corrects north, he can thread through the back edge of the cell. But he needs to know where to look, and he needs to know it in the next 4 minutes before the plane's current heading takes it into the wall of the storm." Karen Bryce did not move for 3 full seconds. "How do you know that?" she said. "Because I've been tracking the storm on my aviation weather app since the turbulence started, and I know what a supercell looks like, and I wrote my scholarship paper on exactly this kind of navigational failure scenario." He paused. "My name is Ezra Cole. I'm 16. I know how this sounds. But I need you to let me into that cockpit." Karen looked at him. In 11 years as a flight attendant, she had dealt with drunk passengers, medical emergencies, a bomb threat, and a fistfight at 30,000 feet. She had been trained to follow protocol. She had been trained to never, under any circumstances, allow an unauthorized person into the cockpit. She had also been trained to stay alive. She opened the cockpit door. First Officer Marsh turned at the sound of the door. He saw Karen. He saw the teenager behind her. His expression shifted from desperate focus to outright confusion. What? Who is this? Karen, I need 4 minutes, Ezra said, moving past Karen and into the right side of the cockpit. I know that's not enough time to explain why you should listen to me, so I'm just going to tell you what I see and you can decide. He leaned over the navigation display without touching it. His eyes moved across it with a speed that made Marsh's confusion deepen. Your magnetometer on the left wing sensor array is damaged. The heading reading is off by 38 to 42 degrees. You're not flying northwest. You're flying almost due north, directly into the densest part of the cell. Marsh stared at the display. Then at the boy. That's, the display shows. The display is wrong, Ezra said, calm and flat. Cross-reference your standby compass. Bottom center panel. The mechanical one. The one that runs on no electricity at all. Marsh's eyes dropped to the standby compass, the old-fashioned, purely mechanical instrument that every commercial aircraft carries as a last resort. His face changed. The standby compass and the primary navigation display were showing headings that were 41 degrees apart. Oh God, Marsh said. There's a clearing on the back edge of the storm, Ezra said. If you bank left, correct heading 275, and descend to 28,000, you can get under the worst of the cell. The storm's moving northeast at about 40 knots, so the gap is opening, not closing. You have a window. He straightened up. But you need to move now. Marsh looked at the standby compass. He looked at Ezra. He was 29 years old, with 1,400 flight hours, and his entire instinct was screaming that he was about to take navigational advice from a 16-year-old in a gray t-shirt. His other instinct, the one that had kept him alive through 11 years of flying, was looking at those eyes and listening to that voice and making a different calculation entirely. He took a breath. He banked left, heading 275, descent to 28,000. For 90 seconds, the turbulence got worse, the kind of worse that makes passengers grab each other and close their eyes and say the names of people they love. Trays crashed. Someone's laptop hit the ceiling. A child in row 18 screamed for her mother. And then, like passing through a wall, it stopped. The shaking eased. The rain thinned. The lightning moved behind them, flashing in the rear view of the clouds like a retreating army. The plane broke through into clear air. Not perfectly clear, not calm, but flyable, stable, safe. Marsh exhaled a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 10 minutes. His hands were still on the controls, but they weren't shaking anymore. He looked over at Ezra. The boy was already looking at the standby compass, then at the window, then back at the panel. Checking, verifying. The same systematic precision in his eyes that had been there when he walked through the cockpit door. You should be able to reach ATC again now, Ezra said. The storm interference drops significantly in this corridor. Declare the emergency and get Captain Reed to a hospital. Dublin is closer than London. Marsh reached for the radio. ATC came through clear. He declared the emergency. He gave their position. He requested immediate routing to Dublin Airport. Flight 2247, we have you. Emergency landing approved. Dublin is ready for you. Well done. Marsh set the radio down. He sat for a moment in the clearing air, with the storm retreating behind him and Dublin ahead of him and a 16-year-old boy standing quietly in his peripheral vision. What's your name? Marsh said. Ezra Cole. Ezra Cole. Marsh repeated it like he was memorizing it. How does a 16-year-old know all of that? Ezra was quiet for a moment. Then, my grandfather was an Air Force navigator. He taught me to read weather before I could read maps. And I've been building flight simulators on my computer since I was 11. He paused. I've run this exact storm scenario. Not this exact storm, but this type. 17 times. Marsh stared at him. 17 times, he repeated. I like to be prepared, Ezra said simply. A 34,000 pies sobre el Océano Atlántico, el vuelo 2247 estaba siendo destrozado por la peor tormenta en la historia registrada de la aerolínea. Los compartimentos superiores vibraban, los pasajeros gritaban, las luces de la cabina parpadeaban como un latido agonizante. La lluvia golpiba el fuselaje tan fuerte que sonaba como grava lanzada contra un techo de lámina. Los rayos partían el cielo en todas las direcciones, blancos, eléctricos, enormes, y el avión cayó 200 pies en un solo segundo antes de que los alas atraparan el aire de nuevo y toda la aeronave gimiera como algo vivo y en agonía. En el asiento 24C, un chico de 16 años llamado Ezracol apretó los apoyabrazos y miró hacia el techo. No estaba gritando, no estaba llorando, estaba haciendo lo que siempre hacía cuando todo a su alrededor era caos, estaba pensando. Con precisión, en silencio, repasando todo lo que sabía, pieza por pieza, de la manera en que su abuelo le había enseñado a pensar en cualquier problema que se sintiera demasiado grande. Dividelo, Ezra, en piezas.